very warm welcome to week 3 of Lancashire Innovation Festival. What a way to kick it off, talking about food this time of night. I hope everybody's already had their dinner, because otherwise you're going to be very hungry in an hour's time. I'm Jane Dalton from Groundswell Innovation, also from Lancashire's Innovation Board. And I'm very pleased to have with me here this evening Barbara Bray MBE of Allo Solutions, who are a food safety and nutrition consultancy. Sherry Kothari from our own Lancaster University Health Innovation Campus. Zainab Bilal from Pie Metzani and Pie Heroes. And Steph Stephenson from Stevenson's Dairy. That wasn't a mouthful. Welcome everyone. Can we perhaps start by letting everybody understand a little bit more about your links to food production? Steph, tell us more about what you do.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Steph Stephenson, Stevenson's Free Range Milk. Everyone presumes that all cows go out to graze, but sadly that's not the case. And I'm surprised free range milk didn't take on sooner than it has done. But we were about the provenance of our milk. Cows go out to graze, the milk is collected, segregated and processed, and it comes back to us as a first-class product. It's also taken off in the food industry because it's recognised as a quality product in butter, cheeses, cooking, all sorts of different things. So it's a good product.
I always cite you as an example of the idea was out there, but nobody had actually got it to market. And you guys were brilliant at bringing that to Lancashire and making that a reality. So how long have you been going now? It's about 5
years, just over 5 years. Yeah. Well, probably longer. It probably took us about 18 months, 2 years to 18 months to actually get it into production, as in ensuring that it was what we were offering was on the label, so it's credible, it can be sourced, it can be tracked back.
I remember it took you an awfully long time to convince some farmers who knew exactly what was going on and it wasn't going to be as part of your scheme. So well
absolutely,
done for that.
We were laughed at when we first talked about it. We were laughed at. All cows go out to graze, don't they? Sadly, no.
Yeah, no, it's a good lesson for everybody else trying to start up a food business. Thank you. Lovely to hear from you, Steph, and lovely to have you here this evening. Zainab, tell us about you and what you do.
Good evening, Jane. Good evening to everyone on the panel, and hello to everyone else who's zoomed in. So my name is Zainab Bilal, and I am the owner and entrepreneur for Pie Heroes, and we are a fusion award-winning pie business based in the heart of Lancashire in Blackburn, and we're currently producing and we're trying to launch our range, which is based on takeaway flavors. So we're really fitting with the comfort kind of scene and the kind of food vibe that's kind of like trending at the moment. And
tell us what your award-winning pie, what's your latest award winner?
Yeah, so this year we won the best cheese and onion pie in the UK, and that's from Melton Mowbray, and that was a really big win for us. We were like the champions for the savoury kind of class, but we also took lots of different awards for our different innovative kind of creative fusion flavoured pies.
Fantastic, taking pies to Melton Mowbray from Lancashire. I like your style.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to have you here this evening. And Sherry.
Hi, thanks very much, Jane. Hello, everyone. So I'm Sherry Kothari. I'm the director of the Health Innovation Campus at Lancaster University. My background really straddles medicine and healthcare, science and research, and business. And I've been working at this interface or this nexus for well over 15 years. What really drives me is how we actually bring different disciplines and different sectors together to actually address significant challenges that we face as a society, of which food, of course, is one. I am not a food expert, but I am absolutely passionate about the subject. And in particular, what really drives me in this particular space is some of the rather shocking statistics around food and its link to health. And really the two questions for me are, how do we actually make food, healthy food, accessible to all? And how do we reduce food waste? And later on, I will speak about some of those things, because actually the statistics are really quite sobering.
Sorry, that's just lovely. Love finding the mute button and the unmute button when I'm trying to navigate my desk. Sorry. Barbara, tell us about you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. So my name's Barbara Bray. I'm a food safety and nutrition consultant, and I work especially with small to medium-sized businesses across the food industry, predominantly in the chilled food sector and the fresh produce sector, so the slightly healthier end of the spectrum. But I go out and I help businesses maintain food standards or get certificated to a whole range of food safety standards that their customers require from them. And more recently, I've been working on nutrition strategy. So going out to businesses and helping them on their journey to make healthy, sustainable food. So a lot of people are now taking a look at what they're currently doing and saying, is this sustainable for the environment, and is this healthy for the people who are going to eat it? So it's about how to get businesses down that journey and making healthier and sustainable food.
You make that sound very straightforward. I think you've got a TED talk that makes it sound even simpler as well, haven't you?
Well, in a TEDx talk, you get about 12 to 15 minutes. I can elaborate on it in a lot more depth, yes.
So given that we've got slightly less than that today, probably, but we're really keen to hear what you have to say about the kind of big topics in food innovation at the moment. So tell us a bit more.
Well, looking at 2020, all the talk has been focused on COVID-19, closely followed by Brexit. So it's rare that you get two shocks to the system at the same time, but that's where we're at. And some of the things that we're seeing are either as an intended consequence of those events or as an unintended consequence. And when you think back the last 20 years, how Public Health England has been trying to get us all to eat 5 portions of fruit and veg a day, COVID-19 comes along and suddenly everyone's running to the supermarket to clear all the shelves of fresh produce and try and get healthy. So there's a real focus on health and wellness and people wanting to understand which fruits and vegetables contribute to their immune health and keep them healthier for longer. And on the flip side of that, there was the kind of comfort food craze as people were almost divided. They wanted to be healthy and well, but they also wanted to feel good and using food and drink as a crutch. And unfortunately, we have seen that increase in admissions to hospital from alcohol-related issues, as well as people putting on weight, which in the long term is probably not an issue because everyone will start to calm down and go back to their normal behaviour. But I think there has been a real craving for things that make you feel happy and comfort eating, as well as that health and wellness craze. And I think here in Lancashire, we've got a great opportunity because there's so much fresh produce grown here. It's about how we leverage this new trend and help people understand which are the fruits and vegetables to go after to really improve your health and keep you fit and strong. Another thing I wanted to point out was, again, as a result of COVID-19, was that we're now moving away from business to business and business to consumer, because everyone went online because they couldn't get access to the shops in the way which they had before. We saw that particularly in the food service sector, as food service organisations and businesses couldn't deliver to restaurants and pubs. So a lot of them flipped what they were doing to go direct to consumer. And I think if you look at other countries around the world, so particularly in China and countries where they had a really strong digital presence, they were already going down the delivery of everything from a ball of ice cream to a full shop delivered to people's homes. And I think that's where we're going to see a huge change. And there are some businesses who just weren't prepared for that. They were fixed to the traditional model of bricks and mortar and not really having thought about how they were going to get their product to the door of the consumer. And the third thing that I really want to talk about is the opportunity that we now have from a kind of lunch and food to go, because a lot of people are working from home and will be working from home for the foreseeable. So all those food to go outlets that you'd see at train stations and in town centres aren't selling. They don't have a sale anymore. But I do feel that people still want to have a quick and easy lunch without necessarily have to making it themselves. And again, that's an opportunity for people that can find something within their business that's easy to prepare, healthy and nutritious and fun to have at lunchtime, and that will fill that space. Because, you know, if there was a little food van going down my street around midday, I'd be quite happy to stop it and say, yes, I'm getting lunch from it, rather than having to make my own lunch every single day. Because even my own cooking, it's great, but every day. So I do think we need to leverage that opportunity as food producers in the county and see how we can collaborate and work together to get great tasting food that's healthy to people at lunchtime. Because there is a sliding scale. People tend to eat a healthy breakfast, they like to have a healthy lunch, and in the evening it's just like, oh, let's have alcohol and like comfort food. And, you know, so there's a sliding scale of what people want to eat, and it tends to be that the healthier food is earlier in the day and the more comfort food is at the end of the day. So we do have an opportunity at lunchtime to give people that extra opportunity to get a few more fruit and veg in there.
Yeah, I think anything that drags me away from the humble cheese sandwich yet again for lunch is very welcome in my book. Anybody that delivers a salad would be, as you say, coming down my street, would be fabulous. Thank you. Some really interesting themes that you touched on there, to do with things like business model innovation, not just the food variants that are coming through. We talked before on air about the concept that, you know, 10, 15 years ago, you'd be talking about, well, what's Tesco doing new in trifle? Or what's the latest ice cream variant? And things like gut health were sort of on the fringes of food innovation for sort of, you know, extremists, as it were, in the sector. And I think that seems to have radically shifted, as you say, particularly with COVID. But I'm really interested in this polarization of comfort food versus immune health, gut health, all of that kind of thing, because I think Lancashire sort of almost spans that quite nicely. But perhaps if we hear a bit more from Zainab now about that concept of comfort food doesn't mean dull, does it?
Absolutely not, Jane. Oh my God. If you have not been cooking in this period of time, what have you been doing, guys? Come on. Everybody must have been cooking, right? They've cooked. You know, I heard this thing about everyone knows how to cook a banana loaf now, or something manic like that. And I was like, yes, because I absolutely agree with Barbara. Firstly, you know, she just nailed it. But for me, and I have 5 children, if you know, Jane knows, but I know Barbara outside of this, but Barbara knows. But trending for me is we're not going to go to the freezer anymore, the fridge, for that cheese sandwich that Jane said. Is what have you made, Mom? Because, or what is there to eat? Because it's not just the adults anymore. And I think, so for me, I think what's trending is the grab and go, what Barbara said. It's grab and go in your house, and it's the home cooked food. And also what Barbara said was everyone's become a little bit more conscious. But can I just extend that a little bit more? When I'm gonna just put it out there that, yeah, people are being conscious, but is that an Insta fashion to be more conscious? And, you know, in the side I'm going to eat a pie, blah, 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 blah. But then I'm going to put like color and like or, you know, like a Michelin star, you know, thing on my plate and take pictures of it, because actually I need to feel connected, not just, you know, and I think food is helping us to become connected all of a sudden, and it's more appealing, it's more comforting, it's more satisfying, and those are the things I myself are craving as a child, as an adult. And so yeah, that's where I stand on what Barbara said. But I think that's what's trending, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you just people just need to tune into your Insta videos, don't they, if they need some inspiration with what to cook for lunch or dinner, really. You've
Nutella pies, right? No, we
Nutella
did
pies.
the chickpeas, and I know Barbara said, and Sherry was saying more sustainable food, wasn't she? And people are trying to move away from meat. and biome or vegetable, or actually they're not kind of steering all 100% away from meat, are they? They're kind of like saying, actually, give me a meat and potato pie, you know, give me chicken, but I want to know exactly where it came from, because I've got a bit more time on my hands now, guys. So I want to know how you cooked it, where it came from, and what have you put in it. And I think that's what, for me, I think that's the challenge we've had. And like, because people want comfort food, and I think because it's stopping people from going outside, I think our, you know, our kind of the kind of food, the takeaway brand that we're trying to launch is right, is, you know, it's really good timing for us. So, you know, I think this would be good, because it's, you know, people want to eat at home, but they want to know what's in their food. So these takeaways, we've inspired our brand, and we've kind of took those flavors and put them inside the pies. And I think that's what people want, is comfort food.
Anything that makes the humble chickpea sound appetizing, it's got to be a good thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can always, like I said, you know, you can get these cutters and you can make it all colorful, but you know, the main attraction is the actual comfort food. But I think making it all like satisfying or colorful, you know, appealing on, you know, Instagram, because people can't come face to face. Like, we're not face to face right now, but I got to look appealing, my background's got to look appealing. You know, I've got to sell you something that, you know, using my voice, so it's got to, you know, by pictures. So you know, I think the food selfie is how we've evolved this landscape of food. You know, people aren't turning their TVs on as much, they're sitting eating their food with a phone in their hand, and it's fashionable to do this. And I'm sharing this food with you right now. This is what I'm eating right now. This is the grab and go, right? this is the grab and go in my hand.
So where do you get your inspiration from? For is it Instagram that you look to for the colors or the flavors you're going to go to next?
Yes, yeah, because they're the people that are buying the food. So it would be wrong of me not to follow the trend or not to look at the trend, but it's about, you said about innovation in Lancashire, Jane, and for me, coming from Lancashire, I've got to look at the innovation that's in Lancashire, and I'm really proud of that, and I'd like to say that's what still inspires me to, you know, put the flavors in our pie. So, like, you know, Lancashire is known for homemade food. You know, you said comfort right at the beginning. Yeah, comfort, we're the home of comfort. You know, homemade food. There's a big cultural impact on our food and the way that we making the foods. That's, you know, it's become quite diverse because of the changing landscape. But that doesn't mean it is like a really big good fusion of East meets West. It's all about heritage for us. So pies is a big heritage, is a British staple food, and we're just changing it up to meet the current trend. And like I say, it's a staple food. So I think all of those things, and currently what we're seeing is what is inspiring us to, you know, that's what we're looking at, and that's what's helping us to, you know, to plan and innovate the food, you know, the foods that the flavors that we you know, we're working on.
Thank you for that, Zainab. We've nicked all your ideas now, but we'll, you know, you'll get to market before us, so it's fine. But Steph, if I can come to you next, because there's something about the innovation that you're working on, which is, again, from a very sort of known quantity. You might think, well, surely they've done everything they could possibly do with dairy, it's fine, you know, there's only so many variants. But because of the work you've been doing, and I know you've been working with the Rothamsted Institute as well on this, about the nutrition within the base product and making that as good as it can possibly be as that core. Is there anything you can tell us a bit more about to do with that?
Yeah, it's the sustainability of it really for us. Professor Lee talks about volume doesn't provide the most efficient system. So cows need to rely on pasture for most of their diet, which makes it more sustainable. So he talks about society providing a valuable, healthy product that consumers want to purchase, the economy in providing healthy food within a profitable business, and also the environment, ensuring that the farming practices minimize emissions and maintain other ecosystems. So the pasture-based dairy farming system is it meets all that criteria. But what also that we found as well that we weren't aware to quantify, it's the product that the cows produce, that the taste is very different to the milk that you buy in the supermarkets. It has a sweeter taste. Again, that's to do with the pasture, the grass-based system, and also the pasture that's cut to feed them in the winter as well. It's the timing, and that's something else. These smaller farms, so the sugar levels are higher in the grass. I think it's around lunchtime, so they would cut it then to maximize the sugar content for the winter feed to maintain the sugar levels in the grass. And all these things are just small things, but all those small things to small farms go to maintain that quality product. And what highlighted with us, because we collected from 3 farms originally, and the milk was segregated, so they're all grassland farms. The milk was segregated, so it wasn't mixed with any mass-produced milk from intensive farms. It really highlighted the flavour of the milk, the sweetness, the taste. And once we got that, it was evident through people who began to make purchases in the food industry that it was an asset to their recipes. It enhanced their flavour. We also worked with a really good cheese maker, again based in Lancashire. I know you've all been talking about cheese, the humble cheese sandwich. Well, we also, with the support of Stephen Proctor at Greenfields, produce free-range creamy Lancashire cheese. And Stephen's been making cheese for years, and every time he makes our batch, he always raves on about the yield. We get a higher yield. So we might pay the farmer slightly more, and we may pay more for that raw milk. But actually in the long term, it performs better for us, it produces more, but it also produces a better tasting product. So it's a win-win for us. We sort of then have as we've got free range and looked at other products, we've worked with butter producers, yogurt producers, and again it enhances all those products that has a core milk product. We've looked at ice creams as well, so we tucked into the comfort foods as well. We struggle to make it colourful. We've just got one white product, the white stuff. I think when we first set out, we set out to talk to people really and explain and educate about our milk, what was different about our milk. We knew it, but it's getting that across to other people, because everyone presumes all milk's the same. We looked about what Barbara talked about the sustainability, that our farms are relatively local, the processor is relatively local, and then we have distributors that distribute it, so that it's the sustainability. We also were very lucky that we became good friends with the coffee industry, the independent coffee companies. And again, in Lancashire, we have one of the, he's very, very well known, Ian Steele, in the coffee industry. I think he's well known throughout the UK. And he was a great ambassador for us, because he talks about the beans, the farmers, how he looks after the farmers that produce the coffee, and you go to all that trouble, and then why would you just pour any old milk into your coffee? So we went hand in hand together, and it's been a learning curve for all of us, and we continue to develop as we go along.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to hear that kind of story that is so embedded in things like, well, what mix of crop should you have in the pasture? So is it part clover? Does that do anything to emissions and all that kind of thing, as part of that overall story, when most of the stories that we come out of dairy, that we hear from dairy, are about, well, what we need is the internet of cows. We need this, it has to be huge volumes, it can only work in that way. Surely there has to be room for all different kinds of business models in this.
Absolutely, and I don't want to criticize other farming systems, but we have to be open and we have to be honest. I'm surprised free range milk didn't catch on when free range eggs came about. There's all of that, because I suppose it's what people presume and wrongly presume that, you know, there's got to be a market. For me, it's about labeling. It's informing the customers so that you can make an informed choice about your food. You know, people are looking at what's in their ingredients. Where does it come from? And we should be the same with milk and the other products that it goes into, that we should be clear and open. You know, how many, you know, when you go and get your milk, do you know whether how that's been farmed to produce that milk? And we should have a choice.
Yeah, you know, and you make an interesting point about supply chain resilience as well, and that sense of collaboration, which I think we can come back to later. But just picking up on that point about education and informed choice, Sherry, tell us your view on that kind of approach.
First of all, let me start by a couple of observations, just listening to everybody. So we have just had 2 terrific examples of innovation in the food industry. And let's face it, innovation is the lifeblood of the food industry, because consumer demands and expectations are constantly evolving, as Zainab said. And so food businesses that survive will do and grow will do so because they're capable of this change. So we need to see a bit more of this, and building on that, particularly that sort of we've heard about consumer choice and expectations evolving. We've also heard about business models, and you know how increasingly through the last 6 months we started to look at a business to consumer model emerging that Barbara referred to, and for me, that really comes down to culture, because, you know, it is such an integral part of food systems. And, you know, at the risk of bringing up that humble cheese sandwich again, global diets have become remarkably homogenized and largely based on a Western diet. And I think this leads to those sort of economic inequities, etc., particularly for farmers, small-scale farmers, who are still the majority of farmers globally. And this is a real threat to their livelihoods. But cultural dimensions, I think, are at the heart of what and how food is produced, exchanged, consumed. You know, they mediate this gap between food calories and what's, you know, people's notions of what is good food and what is healthy food. And we just cannot underestimate, or we shouldn't underestimate, the resources and services provided by that local knowledge and skills and local ecosystems, because they are what will help to manage and sustain the whole food industry, particularly if we're going to focus local. So for me, culture is a big thing, and I think we are starting to appreciate that. I think we're on the cusp of a bit of a shift, and it probably is a paradigm shift that we're working towards, because I think we've all acknowledged that people are starting to think a bit more about where their food comes from, whether it's healthy, whether it's organic. They want to know, and I think we just need to think about how we keep that momentum going. And then, of course, you know, coming, I guess, to health. Again, I think, you know, we all know that diet influences health. Poor diets drive up healthcare costs for society as a whole. And our current eating habits will affect our health, but they will also affect the environment and agricultural production. So these are all, for me, interlinked. So this question about education is actually, you know, we need to take the systems approach, and both in terms of educating and raising awareness, but also in terms of the questions we ask and the people we bring together to address those. I think we really do need to take a systems approach. And for far too long, I think, different components of the food system have been dealt with separately. So, you know, agriculture, farming, production, supply chains, consumer behavior, our consumption of food, all of that, you know, we need to bring it all together and look at it as a system.
Yeah, I just want to pick up, we'll come on to things like systems thinking, and I think you're absolutely right, that'd be extremely valuable. I'd like to come on a little bit more into what Lancashire could do and what role it could play in that. But just to this point about education and informed choice, I'm all for it, but I think there's sometimes a pushback from the public, and this is an open question to everybody really, but it might affect you and your work, Sherry, more than most. Who are the people that should be sharing this message in a way that will be heard? Because my sense is, if we're not careful, what we do is switch people off quite quickly to these.
You're absolutely right, and I think that is a problem not unique to education about food. I think it's common in so much messaging. I mean, you know, we just have to look at the last 6 months and the whole COVID crisis and trying to get messages out. And so we won't even get started on that. So I think you're absolutely right. I think what I would say is that it's probably incumbent upon all of us, because, you know, this is a global issue we're talking about. And for me, a lot of the raising awareness comes down to who the target audience, because I think we have to vary messages according to the target audience. You know, whether you're talking to children, whether you're talking to adults, you have to make those messages heard. And so I think part of that is, you know, the type of language we use, whether we use images to convey key messages. But also, I think, again, we've got to acknowledge diversity in cultures and demographic here. And so, you know, if we're talking about people from deprived backgrounds, there's no point going to them and saying, eat your 5 fruit and veg a day, it's good for you. They can't afford it. So that message is going to get lost and not heard, and they will just ignore it. So I think a lot of, you know, that whole communication piece, I cannot stress enough, actually needs to consider what we're trying to get across and who we're trying to get across to. And then, you know, that it needs to be tailored accordingly. And I'll give, if I may, I'll give an example of a local initiative that I've found actually has worked really, really well. And almost by stealth, if I could use that phrase. So there is an initiative called Healthier Fleetwood. And this is a movement that was started by a local GP, Dr. Mark Spencer, that basically offered people the chance to empower themselves and start making positive decisions about their healthcare. And they did various things, you know, they did sporting things and gardening things. But one of the things they did was actually set up, starting with a fairly small scale cooking competition between a particular year group and just 2 schools to begin with. And after this had run for about 2 years, Dr. Spencer said to me that one of the things they noted was that, so Fleetwood is largely a fishing community. Most of the fish that is caught in Fleetwood actually doesn't land in Fleetwood. It is sold to markets elsewhere. And what they found out through just running this little food competition between primary school kids was that actually a lot of local people didn't buy the fish because they didn't know what to do with it, because their idea of a fish meal was fish and chips from your local chippy. And so after 2 years of something like this, they found that these kids were going back home and asking their parents to put a particular type of fish on the shopping list and said, if you buy this, I will show you what to do with it. Now, there is a really good example of how, you know, educating young people through just something like food competition, which raises their awareness of eating healthy. It teaches them how to cook. It teaches them the value of the different food groups and their link to health, etc., has started to bring about this change.
I think that's a fantastic example. And as you say, by stealth is maybe what we need to look at with some. I know Kay Johnson has just been awarded an MBE for her work with the larder, particularly over COVID, because I know their whole team was absolutely.
Well, there's another fantastic example. Yeah,
exactly. This is obviously a theme which is huge on your agenda, Barbara. Do you want to tell us some of the projects that are on your radar?
There seem to be quite a few projects. I was talking, I don't know if anyone's aware of the work of Dr. Megan Blake, who's based in Sheffield, and her work covers the Doncaster area, Sheffield, and a few of those cities. And she's been looking at a concept called food ladders, which looking at food insecurity from a different way. So rather than people coming to one central point where they just collect food and take it away again, it's about having an integrated approach. So you're helping people at every step of their chain of difficulty and engaging with them in lots of different ways. So like Sherry mentioned, you have cooking classes, but you also have food donations where it's appropriate, but also support around some of the non-food crises that people are having. So you build a sense of community where people can come to a place and they're sharing stories and they're able to socialize, because one of the key take-home messages I got from Megan Blake was that if you don't have any money, it takes away your social life, because you can't say to somebody, let's go for a drink, let's go for a meal. At least if you're coming to a centre that's part of your community where everybody's going, then that kind of issue's taken away. Because everybody's there to join in and share food and share that experience. And that was one thing that was difficult during the COVID-19, the height of the pandemic, before we even had social distancing. It was a case of just don't leave the house, because people weren't able to do that. So I know that work has been going on. And when you look at different parts of the country, you know, take London, for example, there have also been other organisations that have looked at that approach. So it's not just about dishing out a doggy bag, it's about involving people, helping them have some dignity and helping them along the way with other difficulties to manage those, rather than just saying we've ticked the box for food need. And you know, the type of food that you give people, it does say a lot about the type of relationship that you can build with them. If they think that you're giving them food and skills and kind of care and attention, it goes a long way to solving problems, rather than just saying, okay, here's some food and see you tomorrow. And I think that's what we need to look at more carefully. Another thing that's come out of that same work when I was discussing with Megan was about how we talk about repurposing food. So in the food industry, it's all about just in time. We've been evolving into this just in time system where everything's super, super efficient. So from getting food to the retail, that bit works very, very well. The other side, maybe not so, but what that has revealed from a food waste conversation is that we actually inherently have surplus food built into the system. So because a supermarket has an expectation that there'll be a certain tonnage of product coming through the door every single day, a grower or a producer has to kind of have that fixed tonnage plus a little extra to make sure that they can deliver that amount, which means that you're always going to be playing around with a certain amount of surplus depending on the weather, on demand. And what do we do with that surplus? We know we're going to have it. So rather than just say, well, when it hasn't sold, it has to go in the bin or to a biodigester or to a food bank. It's about building in a home for that surplus to start with. And I'm starting to see food businesses, if you take the watercress company, they're looking at how they do just that, because they know that they're working with a certain percentage of excess product every week of the year. And it doesn't matter how good they are at their job, demand peaks and forecasting might mean that they're going to have surplus. So what are they going to do with that surplus? They've been looking at how they can take that product into hospitals and put it in the canteen or give it to patients and make them aware of how to eat a really healthy, nutritious food. So there are other businesses. If you look at Lancashire and all the type of products that we grow here, you could have that same model of where you know you're going to have a surplus, but you build it in to your weekly run of whatever you're doing and build relationships with processors or other people who can take that product and make it into something that's useful and nutritious, because you can't sell it, you haven't got a sale for it, so it has to go somewhere. But what we don't want to do is for it to go in the skip, or yes, it can go in a biodigester and that's helpful for energy, but really the first port of call should be somebody's plate for that food, rather than having it going as a secondary crop somewhere.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's 2 points I would like to pick up on that from with Steph, actually, because I know food education is huge in your work and what you've been doing with Scouts, Guides, you name it, in education through the years. As good old fashioned, just show people how to cook a meal from a very early age. So I wanted to just see if you got any words of advice on that score about what you know works, but also to that point about, you know, perhaps secondarily, what does it take to build a food system, because you've done that and you built that sort of supply chain locally. So perhaps food education first, then we'll come on to the second point.
In terms of food education, it's talking to your market, isn't it? You know, from day one, I did talks in schools. We did a tasting session at Lancaster University with some students in the early days, and even we were blown away by that. Students organised a competition. If they could pick the free range milk out of a choice of 3 from a little tiny shot glass, they could win, or the prize was a free pint of milk. And all was going well, and we had lots of phone calls. We need more milk, because it was so noticeable, and you know, just making it fun, really. We do lots of stuff with Scouts and Guides and cooking, and we always, you know, get them to cook from scratch. And it's, yeah, they make mistakes, they burn things, it's part of the fun, but it's that exploring and tasting. I think for us, the key was tasting and exploring and just talking to people and listening to them. One of the first things we did within the milk industry, there was always this. It was always about price, the cheapest price. What's the cheapest price you can supply me with milk? What's the cheapest price? And once we committed to free range, part of it, we wanted to reward the farmers for the, you know, the quality product. So we talked about that. So one of the easy things for me, as well as a business, once we'd got to that point when people rang and they would say, oh, I want you to supply me with milk, what's your best price? My first thing would be, well, if you're wanting a cheap price, please don't come to us, because we're not about cheap, it's about the quality. And it was having the confidence to say that as a business, and get that message out there, and that sort of it's a bit like dropping a stone in a pond. It rippled outwards, and again we were laughed at, because how can you afford to do it? And it was a risk that we took, but we kept explaining why we were taking the risk. Small steps, really, and just keep talking to people. Same message, but explain it and be honest and be open, be transparent. You know, we couldn't, when we first launched, people wanting our milk from all over, and we couldn't meet demand. You know, it wasn't cost effective, and we had to be open and honest about things like that. That you can't always, you know, you can't run, you've got to walk before you can run. It was about taking small steps. We still continue to learn now, more so with COVID, because obviously it's had a massive impact on our chain. And again, it's just talking to people, explaining to them your situation. Yeah, I'm honest. Just
I think, yeah, I was going to say you are. I know that, but, and open and have those kind of open conversations. And I think perhaps it goes back to Sherry, what you were saying earlier about culture. That, you know, this is the sort of county where we get, you know, Peter Kay standing there and saying garlic bread, it's the future. You know, we're not great on change, are we? You know, we're not great on this has got to be different. What do you mean? You've got to do something different. Yeah. So, and do you think there's a culture of too many walls built up? I don't know, Zainab, have you got an opinion on what it's been like trying to set up? Has it been easy to have those kinds of conversations? Zainab, yeah, sorry.
Hi, Jane. Yeah, so yeah, I think I agree with Steph. Really, it is being hard, and when people are used to eating what they're used to eating, it's hard to change that mindset. It's difficult, but do you know what? People, they are coming around. They are changing, and because I think the current situation is really helping the food the food market, really, because people are bored and they want something new, and they don't want something normal anymore, and they want change, and you know, I think they're coming around, honestly. They are, and we're always looking for the next, something. Give me something new, what's fresh and what's exciting, just something I can go home to forget what happened today. So yeah, going back to the earlier question. So who should be the person that's educating everybody? I think we all play a part, but I think maybe we're doing it wrong. I think we're using the same old ways, and I think if we're going to be innovators of food, then we need to be innovative in how we're selling that message. And I don't think it's being sold on the platforms that are current. So, and because I don't see them, I don't see their messages. Yeah, and it goes back to what Steph said. It's about the manufacturer as well. So for us, like, when we started, so like, us, Jane, but when we started our business, it was because we were making the pies as a quick fix, as a go-to dish that we could quickly cover with pastry, and we're just livening it up with spices. But that was because we needed to get food on the table for those 5 children, and we had a really busy lifestyle. So actually nothing's changed. The quality hasn't changed. We wouldn't feed somebody something we wouldn't feed our own kids with. So it goes back to and it's what Sherry said. It's all about culture and that ethos, and that moral compass within that particular manufacturing company.
Well said. Yeah. Barbara, what else do we need for a more effective sort of food system within Lancashire? Do you think what's missing, or what lessons could we learn from other places?
I think there's definitely a lesson of collaboration, because people in this county are very friendly, and you go to events and everybody knows each other. But what's that barrier for people actually wanting to work together? Because when you think about consumers, we don't go out and say, right, today I'm buying cheese. You go out and you buy cheese, and you buy bread, and you buy vegetables. You buy a range of things, a diverse range of foods to make a meal. I don't see why producers can't be better at collaborating with each other to get the components of a meal together, or to get the components of a shop together, and help people along that journey. Because yes, you might have a fantastic cheese, but I'm only going to eat that maybe 3 days this week. I'm not going to eat it 3 meals in a row. So it's about looking at how people can work together to find solutions. And going back to what I said about that lunch solution, it might be a case that there are a few people who could get together and make meals, lunches, salads, whatever it is, to take out to people at home so they can have a ready-made lunch. And it's about leveraging those relationships, because people who have good relationships use those to collaborate and see where businesses can support each other. I really like Steph's story about selling the milk to the cheese producer and so on. You build a good relationship that's based on quality and trust and serving the consumer. So if you think about how a consumer eats, it is about having a diverse range of foods. If for everybody who can afford to pay for their food, that's how we eat. We don't just eat one thing. So we need to leverage those relationships and make sure we get a range of foods to the consumer.
Yeah, fair point. I think, as you say, it's one of our strengths within Lancashire. We should be good at that. So worth looking into. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions coming up on the Q&A. I just want to leave because I'm conscious of time. We're already nearly at the end of the hour, and we get to actually go and have our dinner and things like that. There's a question about what we can do to capitalise on this idea of food to go. I wonder whether that's almost for the participants and the people watching to come up with the business idea. I don't know, but Sherry, from your perspective, if it was the healthiest, uber brilliant for health innovation, how would you like to see that formed?
I think that's a great idea, and I think this is how innovation happens, right? Because the consumer is becoming a bit more discerning, or circumstances have changed, or people are just ready for something a bit different, and we've already got examples of different here. So there is something like this already that has been set up across a number of cities globally, I think. And certainly more recently, I think I read somewhere, and I must admit, I cannot remember the detail, but there is something similar that has been set up in London, where people are delivering simple, hot, ready to go food for those people who are working from home. Because if the rest of you are anything like me, I actually find on some days I have less time because I'm at home. I don't stop sort of stop and say, okay, I'm going to walk to the cafe and go and get something. It's like the kitchen's just there, and when I have time I'll go and grab something, kind of thing. So I think there is already a move towards something like that. What would I like to see? Well, I mean, I like the work in Sheffield with the idea around food ladders. It's one of my big bugbears when it comes to food is waste. It really upsets me when you think about some of the statistics around food waste. That we roughly 1/3 of the food we produce for human consumption globally is lost or wasted every year. And in the UK, we waste 10.2 million tonnes each year. And some of the things we've seen happening around us, where people are trying to make sure that we turn this whole industry into zero waste, would be the thing for me, if we could make that happen. And even if we're just starting small in Lancashire, to say, okay, let's look at how much food we're producing, how much of that can we actually make sure doesn't go to waste or isn't lost, because it's also lost along different parts of the food chain as well. And so if we could change that. And the other thing for me that I would love to see happen is shorten our supply chains. We've all seen through COVID, albeit not with food, but through the whole PPE thing, that actually long supply chains do have their weaknesses. And where we've got a region that has got, where agriculture is a big part of communities, we should be doing more locally to address those things. And I want to end with just actually saying that we've got to keep up this cultural change, because it doesn't come easy, and as both Steph and Zainab have illustrated through their journeys, that actually it takes a while to convert people. But culture change, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a seep effect. The more people we convert, the more that ripple effect will be felt. And I mean, just look at, and I find this example really funny, that you look at how popular Indian food is in the UK. And, about 10 years ago, I read somewhere that, England's national dish was chicken tikka masala or something like that. Well, that dish doesn't even exist in Indian culture or in India. It was something that just originated here. So when you think about, we have actually come a long way in embracing food from different cultures and different cuisines. We're making progress. We've still got a way to go.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's that twist, isn't it? And we talk a lot about authenticity, and then we look at chicken tikka masala, completely inauthentic, as you say. It takes it in a completely new direction. But take something that people are familiar with, give it a twist. It's exactly what Zainab's been very good at doing, and lots of other food innovators too. Just wanted to pick up on a sort of combination of two questions that have come in about the little guy versus the big players in the food industry. And perhaps if I come to you, Barbara, for the last response here, but what do you see as some of the structural barriers? Is it impossible to break through now as a small innovator, or can you do it?
I think the barriers are quite high, because now when you look at big food manufacturers, the cost of the kit is a huge cost to bear. And I think where, I don't want to use the B word, but where there was a bit more money floating around for grants on investment and research and development and people expanding their businesses, that money is a bit less easy to come by now. So as a smaller producer, if you were Jaguar Land Rover, you could probably ring at Boris and say, can you lend me a mill? But smaller producers can't do that. And that's why I was talking about the whole collaborative approach, because when you come together, you've got better purchasing power, you've got better bargaining power, and you might end up having to work with a competitor, but actually that gives you more leverage. So I was chopping beetroot earlier, but I haven't got blood on my hands, they're just bright red from beetroot. Just noticed that now. So yes, the whole collaborative piece will actually give people a louder voice, because if you're making an umbrella company together or organisations, I've seen this work in the fresh produce industry where there was a system set up for producer organisations where if you see people growing soft fruit or tomatoes, they're often part of a larger group, and that just helps them get the benefits that they need and get a stronger foot on the ladder. So if they do want to launch something together or do want to take advantage of a new technology, they've all pooled their resources and they could all get at that more easily. And I think, you know, smaller producers, it shouldn't be a barrier, because by working together with other businesses, it doesn't have to be a competitor, it can be somebody completely different, but somebody who's got something that's complementary to what you do. And I think that I liked the analogy, well, not the analogy, the actual example that Steph gave about the coffee and the milk, because, you know, those two things just go together, don't they? So by those two businesses working together, you've got a great end result, because people want milk in their coffee and they want that consistent story about having come an authentic business that cares about the planet and people and the animals. And, you know, they couldn't have done that each on their own. They have to do that together. And that's a great example of how that works.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, we've come to the end of this session, but I'm sure there'll be more questions arising from this conversation, and thank you all very much for your inspiration this evening. There'll be half a dozen new businesses setting up tomorrow, I should imagine, if Lancashire's anything to go by in the past. We'd very much like your feedback, if you're listening in, to the kinds of things that we can help to do to build that system approach within Lancashire. What are the structural things that can be done to support young businesses coming through, people with ideas that really want to make something happen, because we're conscious it's easy to get crushed at that stage. So whether that's finding out what support is available, or, you know, every step of the way, tell us what's required. I'd be really keen to hear that. And all that remains for me to do is to thank our panel once again for your really interesting perspectives on all of this, and to hand back over to Dan.
Thank you very much, Jane, and thank you to all the panel for an intriguing and really interesting discussion there, and really interesting to get so many sort of diverse angles on food innovation in the county and what that looks like. So the festival continues throughout October. We've got plenty more to come. We'll be looking tomorrow at clean energy in the morning, and then sustainable transport in the afternoon. You'll find out all the talks on lancashireinnovationfestival.co.uk. So thanks very much, everybody, and I will end it there. Thanks for your time. All the best.